So we could talk. I told you, you're a really fascinating man. I've got a whole page here on my notes page. We're on the third line. How'd you get into journalism? So there's so much to get through because you're so fascinating as a bloke. So I know you've done some mad, crazy stuff that you just throw away like it's nothing. We all think our own lives are just, because they're our own lives. We know it. But you've done some really, really cool stuff. How, and if I'm missing big gaps in between, please feel free to jump in and tell me stuff. But you spent years in America being a boxer, being a sparring partner, being a journalist. That 2, 3, 4, 5 year period, can you talk to me about that, please? And what that meant to you? What you did?
It's funny. I mean, again, solitude, isolation, darkness, struggle. Weirdly now, I have so much fondness for those days though. When you think I was on my own at school, I hated it. I then had the freedom out in America and loved it and embraced it. And I don't know if you can relate to that with what you've done with AEW and your travels through fighting, but it was weird. I suppose because I still didn't really have loads of friends back home, I just loved it. But the whole point of going over was to make a career for myself in boxing. I just didn't know as what. I remember I went out there with a business card and it said Tris Dixon, amateur boxer, boxing trainer, boxing journalist. So I remember I started off the journey at Kevin Rooney's gym in the Catskills, right? Mike Tysons' old trainer. Mm-hmm. And I went to be trained by Kevin and I gave him this boxing card and he looked at it and he's like, "What the fuck are you?" And I'm like, "I don't know, but I'm here for something."
How long did you train with Kevin for?
I was with Kevin 3 or 4 months, something like that.
What was that? You must listen to, for those that aren't boxing fans, there'll be people who aren't boxing but they listen to this podcast. So the man that kind of helped guide Mike Tyson to become Mike Tyson, Iron Mike that we all know and many love, he trained you.
Yeah. So,
that's so cool.
Yeah, it was. So Kevin at that point, liked to drink, liked to gamble. He wasn't at the gym all the time. In itself, there were lots of lessons and it was a great experience there. So I went to Catskill. And I mean,
North New York.
That's right. About 4 hours north of New York City. Yeah. So out in the sticks, in the mountains. And we had a little stable of fighters. There was a heavyweight called Andre Kopilov who would fight Devour or Touch of Sleep Williamson. We had Leonard Pierre who would fight Kelly Pavlik and John Duddy. We had Jay Krupp, a pro from New Orleans who would headline on ESPN. We had little old me who would do absolutely nothing. But Kevin was hit and miss at the gym, but it was an amazing experience. So I went there, I'd sold my car and I was going to stay in America for as long as I could. This was pre 9/11, so visa's not quite as stringent and all the rest of it. And I was like, well, let's see it out and just see how long I can make it last.
How old are you at this point?
20, 21.
So a massive step for a young man to take.
Yeah, didn't even think about it. It was never a thing. It was like, well, I've got nothing to do at home. These job rejection letters are coming in thick and fast. Let's get out and, see if I can make something happen. The idea actually was to go and see Angelo Dundee and to Eddie Futch and to travel around to all these places. But when I got to Catskill,
who are those people?
Angelo Dundee trained Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard down in Miami, 5th Street Gym. Eddie Futch trained Joe Frazier and, 30 or 40 other world champs. And they were still living. In fact, I did get to meet them. In fact, on that trip at the Hall of Fame, there was a really surreal moment where I was sat down having a drink with Angelo Dundee, Eddie Futch, and the great Cuban Kid Gavilan. They've all passed away now. And I was thinking, talk about imposter syndrome. That was even before I'd written a word about boxing.
Yeah. I'll give you that one. You can have imposter syndrome for that one.
But anyway, so I'm at Kevin's and I remember him saying where are you staying? I'm like, I've got nowhere to stay. This was on the phone. And I'm like, but I'm here now. He's like, well, I sent someone to come and get you. You sent me Andre, his big heavyweight, to get me. And he took me he's like, how much money have you got? I was like, nothing. And he says, well, I'll take you to the cheapest place in town. And he took me to the Catskill Motel. And they were charging 90 a night. I'm like, I'm going to have to go home at the end of the week. I haven't got that kind of money. I agreed to deal with them for 150 for the week, something like that. And that obviously bought me a week there. And I was going to the gym and training and made friends with Jay and Leonard in particular. Andre had his fight coming up, but I did like Andre and his wife at the time. And Leonard I was particularly close with. But after about a week there, I'd obviously had nothing to do but train. I didn't have a job or anything. So I was walking around the village. I love the whole Mike Tyson story at that age. And Customato, the trainer, talked about fear and how like you need fear, you need to be able to control it. And I'd never really heard anyone talk about pre-fight fear in an interview before, but Cuss was great talking about it. And you'll know before a fight you shit yourself, right? And no one ever told me that nerves are normal before you box. So remember before my fights, I thought what was happening to me was unique to me, and that it was just me struggling to contain nerves. And it wasn't down to that. It was obviously just that everyone gets it. It's just, as Cuss would say, heroes and cowards both experience fear. It's how you react to it that defines you. So I would go and look at Mike's old house where he lived with Cuss. I went to Cuss's gravesite, and then I found this resort, Forlini's, and it was like a kind of rundown resort, and it had a pool. And the owner, Freddie Forlini, who sadly passed away a few years ago, was an elderly gent then, and he took me under his wing and let me stay there. And there was like an outhouse, and I stayed in the outhouse. And I remember my weekly food shop was a loaf of bread, a packet of sliced American cheese, and a packet of sliced ham. And I bought a polystyrene water cooler, would fill it up with ice from the bar in the resort, and I would put my bread and my turkey and my cheese and my ham in there. And I remember I would have a sandwich a day. And on the days I sparred, I'd have a cheese and ham sandwich. And on the days I didn't spar, I'd have a cheese or ham sandwich. So the reward was I'd double up. But Freddie let me stay there, like comparatively cheaply, on the exchange that I just helped around. And so I would go and get ice for the girls, for the bar that was there. I would cut the grass, and like they had a pool. So I mean, I didn't use it much, but I could use the pool. And yeah, like it was weird. Like I quickly got an identity, because it's only a small village, where people are like, oh my God, like people were doing interviews with me like, oh my God, you're the English fighter. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not that good. But people like, it's funny. I just felt like part of the fabric there in a short space of time. And then me and Leonard were pretty close. I remember, we would clean the gym. Like it hadn't been cleaned for ages. And that gym was basically a museum. Like all the cuttings of Mike's career were on the walls. They were all yellowed and faded, because obviously we're 15, 20 years removed from there. And one of the best things about that whole experience was anyone who idolized Customato the way that I did at the time, who obviously trained, he was the guy that really found Mike and created what he became. He also trained Floyd Patterson and Jose Torres, two former world champs. And I was all invested in that story at the time. Is when Kevin wasn't there, or even when he was there, he'd say like, put on a tape player. There was a cassette player, and you learn over there the Tyson punches numbered 1 to 9, and you put in the tape player, and on it is Cuss calling out the combinations, from beyond the grave, and it was just it was amazing nostalgia. Yeah, and I became okay. I became a decent fighter. I felt there. And I sort of learnt the Tyson peekaboo system. I had some pretty bad back issues there at the time, which was stopping me moving my upper body as well, which was, meant sometimes in sparring that it was hurting less to get punched in the face than it was to move out of the way, which wasn't great.
Man, I've been there with my Achilles. My Achilles used to hurt me more. When I was boxing for a couple of year period, I was sparring with Frotch. I boxed Wayne Reed, and I banged him out in the 5th round. But on the 3rd round, he threw a big loop yourself, a big overhand right hook, and I saw it coming, and I said to myself, I should move, because it's going to clock me. I'm not going to block it. And I thought, I'm not going to, because the pain in my, you snapped both of yours, I've done both of mine. The pain in my Achilles was so bad, I thought, I'm just going to take this punch. And I'm now willingly at a point in my life where I was taking punches to the head rather than moving my feet because it hurt so much. So I know exactly what you mean. When you say that, I know exactly what you mean. It's not a nice place to be, where you'd rather get hit in the head rather than move because you're in that much pain.